Upon the surrender of Japan, General MacArthur ordered the Japanese authorities to account for all prisoners of war under its jurisdiction. Each prisoner of war camp was to have a PW sign in yellow paint painted on the rooftops of each internment facility for the purpose of dropping food, clothing, and medical supplies to the POWs by aircraft. At the conclusion of World War II, Japan had 32,418 Allied prisoners of war in Japan at various sites. Rescue parties rescued all those interned during the months of August and September of 1945. Of that total, 11,826 American prisoners of war were recovered. The POW Research Network in Japan noted that 621 POWs died within these internment camps from enteritis, dysentery, beriberi, malnutrition, polyneuritis, and neuritis, with the main cause of deaths the lack of food and medical supplies and mistreatment. The Tokyo divisional camps consisted of the Tokyo area, Omori, Shinagawa, which is a hospital, Ofuna, the interrogation center, Kawasaki No. 2, Yokohama area, Netso No. 4, Niigata No. 5, Niigata No. 15, Ashio No. 9, Minami Senyu No. 10, and Convent Santama. Japanese soldiers salving the metal drums dropped with POW supplies at Omori prison war camp near Tokyo. B-29s dropping food, clothing, and medical supplies to American prisoners of war of the Japanese military. It was a tremendous task, finding over 100 prisoner of war camps and dropping 50-gallon drums of food, clothing, and medical supplies to prisoners of war in Japan at the end of World War II. This map of Japan shows the location of over 100 prisoner of war camps, where the prisoners of war were utilized by various Japanese industrialists as slave labor at its facilities. At various locations, the POWs were working at facilities that produced armaments for the Japanese Imperial Army to be used against American troops in the Far East. This map of the Tokyo Bay area of Japan shows the location of a large number of prisoner of war camps where American prisoners of war were utilized as slave laborers. This area had a large number of heavy armament manufacturing facilities. These facilities were prime targets of American B-29 bombing, which caused the death of many prisoners of war. B-29s dropping food, clothing, and medical supplies to American prisoners of war of the Japanese military. It was a tremendous task, finding over 100 prisoner of war camps and dropping 50-gallon drums of food, clothing, and medical supplies to prisoners of war in Japan at the end of World War II. Prisoners of war at Omori prisoner of war camp near Tokyo greeted their rescuers. This group of prisoners of war had been subjected to cruel and inhumane treatment for over 3 years and 4 months. They had been subjected to slave labor at various industrial sites in the Tokyo area. The arrow identifies Major Pappy Boynton, World War II flying ace, who was shot down over a ball in January 1944 and became a prisoner of war of the Japanese military at Omori prisoner of war camp and rescued on August 29, 1945. Commander Harold Stassen, who was in charge of rescuing POWs in the Tokyo Bay area, along with other naval officers in a conference with Japanese officers at Omori POW camp on August 29, 1945. POWs at Omori prisoner of war camp near Tokyo, hailing the naval party arriving to rescue them and return them to freedom. There was a large number of sick prisoners of war at the Omori POW camp compound that were hastily taken to the hospital ship USS Benevolence in Tokyo Bay for treatment. These rescued prisoners of war were suffering from malnutrition and lack of medicines and the barbaric treatment by the Japanese military at the Omori POW camp. One of the more serious POWs rescued at the Omori prisoner of war camp near Tokyo. This POW suffered immensely from malnutrition. Another group of POWs at Omori POW camp that required immediate attention and were transported to the hospital ship USS Benevolence immediately. Those seriously sick were given immediate treatment at the POW camp at Omori by naval corpsmen. "696 Allied POWs liberated within 6 miles of the heart of Tokyo and evacuated to a hospital ship Benevolence 12 hours after Navy rescue mission landed on shores of Tokyo Bay. Empty drums and parachutes used for supply drop to Shinagawa Hospital for POWs near Tokyo at the end of World War II. American aircraft dropping supplies to another POW camp near Tokyo. This is a location of the Ofuna Naval Interrogation Center. This camp was used for interrogation, frequently with excessive torture of selected POWs, mostly officers and any men who were submariners and airmen. It was the only POW camp under the control of the Navy. Commander Shasizo was tried and convicted for war crimes and sentenced to 25 years at hard labor. This is a photo of the area where the Ofuna POW camp was located. American intelligence knew of this location in June of 1945. Note all the bomb craters in the vicinity of the camp. American POWs liberated from the Ofuna POW camp near Yokohama await train transportation to Atsugi Air Base and freedom. Note the curious Japanese civilians watching the procedure. Ofuna was southwest of the center of Yokohama and served as a transit camp where the Kempeitai, the counterpart to the German Gestapo, interrogated the POWs, often by the use of torture. It consisted of barracks located around a large open area, surrounded by a tall fence with barbed wire on top. The sleeping area was covered by a thin bamboo mat, and in the corner they had 3 cotton blankets which had to be folded at all times during the day. There were no mattresses or pillows of any kind. The walls were very thin and the rooms very cold. POWs from the Ofuna camp await transportation to freedom. No POW who lived under the terrible conditions they experienced can ever say, the horrors of those years have not left a permanent scar upon them. Those scars will always be with them. The visions of death all about them. POWs from the Ofuna POW camp boarded a train for Tokyo Bay and the hospital ship SS Benevolence. They carried a few personal belongings with them. After boarding a railway car to the next destination and freedom, the Ofuna POWs lean out the car windows and taunt the Japanese guard at the railway station. This is the location of the Kawasaki area POW camps. POWs worked at the following industries: Oshimacho, Japan Express, Hokuto's Electric, Shintetsu Chemical, Niigata Transport, Japan Steel Pipe, Japan Mining, Furukawa Mining, Japan Vehicle, Komagagi Engineering, Electrical Chemical, Tokyo Shibari Electric, Niigata Iron and Steel, Nishin Oil, Nishin Mill, Mitsui Stevedoring, Showa Denko, Senpaku Coalboat Loading, Nippon Steel, and Kokusho Refinery. This is an aerial view of the location of Tokyo Area POW Camp No. 2. In the various industries, POWs perform slave labor in the city of Kawasaki, Japan. This photo of the same Kawasaki area, taken several months after the surrender of Japan, shows where Tokyo Area POW Camp No. 2 had been located and completely demolished by B-29s on July the 25th, 1945. This is an Nishin flour mill POW camp, also known as Kawasaki No. 24. This camp was continually subjected to B-29 bombing raids until the end of the war. This is another view of the Nishin flour mill POW camp, Kawasaki, Japan. This photo was taken after the end of World War II by naval aircraft. The carrier planes dropped a large amount of supplies to we survivors. This POW facility was located right on Tokyo Bay, and we could see all American warships coming into Tokyo Bay. The current family of the wife of the Emperor of Japan owned the flour mill and is still in operation. As can be seen, the mill was heavily bombed by American aircraft. Prisoners of war at the Nishin flour mill POW camp raved furiously at naval aircraft that discovered the camp and put on an air show for we survivors. We survivors were very emotional and not a dry eye among us. On August 29, 1945, we saw naval landing craft approaching our camp and dock area. It proved to be a rescue party. We gathered our personal belongings, boarded the landing craft, and were transported to the hospital ship USS Benevolence. The arrow in the picture points to Ed Jackford, a fortunate survivor of 3 years and 4 months of internment by the Japanese military as a prisoner of war. The landing craft party was accompanied by Commander Harold Stassen, who handled the rescue mission. Commander Stassen is shown here shaking hands with some of our survivors. The arrow in the photo points to Ed Jackford, who was among those rescued that day, initiating his transport to freedom and home. This map shows the location of 8 POW camps in the Yokohama area. POWs worked at the following: Yokohama Shipyard, Japan Steel and Pipe, Osaka Shipbuilding, Yokohama Fabric, Yokohama Stevedore, Dai Nippon Chemical, among others. POWs at one of the Yokohama camps posing for the Japanese photographer for propaganda purposes. Yokohama POWs being transported to the dock area to be ferried to the SS Benevolence hospital ship for processing.